Facebook and Twitter have been accused of complicity in anti-Semitism by the chief rabbi Ephraim Mervis, who urged the platforms to take swift action to challenge the hatred that currently thrives on the platforms. Many social media users, including celebrities and MPs, and me, are boycotting both platforms plus Instagram for 48 hours following a string of anti-Semitic tweets by the grime artist Wiley. Twitter has been criticised for its response to the posts, which are now being investigated by police. The rapper was given a 7-day suspension from the site. Well, the actress Tracy Ann Oberman, who's leading the campaign, says the offensive comments were not tackled quickly enough.
If Twitter, for example, wants to be just a race hate site and allow anything to go, then it must be transparent and say, this is what we are. You can post anything here, in which case people like myself, the people that I know, wouldn't choose to be on it.
I want to know your experience of online hate. Are social media companies doing enough to tackle it, or is the chief rabbi correct? We want to hear from you after 8. We'll be taking your calls. First, however, we're joined by Gideon Falter, chief executive of the campaign against anti-Semitism. Gideon, very good evening. Now, just to explain, you've backed this campaign for people to come off Twitter for 48 hours in protest at what they basically haven't done with regard to that grime artist. Just give us the background.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your solidarity in joining it.
To be honest with you, I was in two minds as to whether to do it for reasons that I might explain after 8. But has it worked?
I think it has worked, and I should add that we were in two minds as well. It's very rare that there's something which is so clear-cut. What was very clear-cut was, of course, Twitter and Instagram's appalling response and Wiley's anti-Semitism. I mean, for those who didn't follow it, Friday morning, Wiley started posting things such as that the Jews are like the Ku Klux Klan. And as the day progressed, he was calling Jews thieves, cowards, liars, cheats. And by the time we got to Friday evening, he was so emboldened by the fact that Twitter and Instagram weren't doing anything about his posts that he'd actually progressed to calling for Jews to be shot and saying that there needed to be a war between black people and Jews. And the thing that is so astonishing is not just the fact that Wiley clearly had this deep-seated, really despicable view of Jews. He also was allowed to get his message out to 500,000 followers on Twitter, 500,000 on Instagram. And the reason that we've backed this campaign to walk out and to boycott the platforms is that really there's very little else that you can do. I mean, these are essentially monopolies. A lot of people, for their businesses, for whatever reason, don't have much option but to use Twitter and Instagram. And these are companies which claim that they want to fight racism. During Black Lives Matter, everyone will remember how they were, doing their absolute best to signal their virtue the whole time about how anti-racist they were. And yet when it's Jews, we contacted them during Wiley's outbursts. We know that they got our messages and they decided to do not a thing about it. And it took them hours and hours, if not days, in fact, before they started taking down some of the material, even the death threats.
There is a lot of racist material on Twitter, I think less so on Instagram. It's virtually impossible, though, for them to take everything down. You see a lot of these egg accounts with 0 followers, and they're clearly, half of them are probably Russian bots. But they can't possibly get to all of those. But when somebody's got that kind of following, 500,000 people, you would have thought that was something where they would be able to act fairly instantaneously.
Yeah, and it's not like they didn't know. I mean, we were in touch with, obviously we have contact with executives at Facebook, executives at Twitter, and we wrote to them and they responded to us. They knew what was going on. This is not that it just sort of slipped under the radar. It was a bad day at the office. This is something they knew fulsomely about. They analysed it. They made their decision that this was hate speech, which they were going to do nothing about. And one of the things that I find so hard is that if you took some of these tweets and replaced the word Jew with blacks or Muslims or gay people, I don't believe that account would still be up. And the fact is that as long as Wiley still has an Instagram account and a Facebook account, a Twitter account, I don't think those platforms can credibly say that they stand against racism. They're very clearly happy to defend his right to use their platform.
You are implicitly accusing the social media companies of being complicit with anti-Semitism, because you're saying that if it was an issue of racism, they would have acted.
Yeah, I mean, anti-Semitism is obviously a form of racism which they don't seem to have as much of a problem with. We absolutely think that Twitter and Facebook, which owns Instagram, in this case are complicit in anti-Semitism because they've allowed it to be broadcast.
Well, that's something we will look into in more detail after 8 o'clock. Gideon, thank you. That's Gideon Falter, Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism.